Maya says she never believed in soulmates. But what else explains a stranger who remembers the color of the mug she uses when it rains? On the first call, Evan laughs at the exact place her story's been. He notices the painting above her desk and tells her about a clinic tent that smells like iodine and crushed grass. The city outside her window feels less mechanical. Nights grow into a ritual. Headphones on, tea cooling untouched. She speaks, and the slight delay of a distant line makes his empathy feel deeper, as if he is waiting for her feelings to arrive. He is always framed by dim canvas and soft noise. The life of a helper who sleeps in borrowed light. When he asks for nothing, she gives everything. When he finally asks for a favor, the favor feels like proof that she belongs in his world. She will say yes before she hears the question finish. By week 3, their calls have a rhythm that feels older than they are. He asks about her mother's recipes and the childhood piano she sold to pay for tuition. She asks about the clinic generator and the metal bed that bruises his sleep. He remembers every detail, even the stray cat that sits on her fire escape. When the connection stutters, he fills the gap by telling her what she is probably thinking, and he is almost always right. She wonders if this is how love works, a private script with no missed cues. The first favor lands quietly. A volunteer's wallet was stolen. Could she front a short-term transfer to keep antibiotics moving? He offers to repay her as soon as a shipment clears. She says yes, because refusal would feel like leaving a patient shivering in the rain. The line hisses. Gratitude blooms in him like light on water. Priya notices first. She hears the new brightness in Maya's voice, and the pauses that carry a careful weight. At lunch, she asks for a photo and studies the tent in the background, the repeating seams that repeat too perfect. She asks what time he calls, then checks the time zones and frowns. She tells Maya that good men can be real and still not be who they say. Maya laughs it off, but their laughter sits wrong on the table. That night, the call opens with a new story about a generator failure. The light is different, and yet the same. As if the tent is a set with one switch, Maya tries to shake it away. When he says her name, it lands exactly where she wants it to. Like the note she used to hold on the piano before she learned it could be sharpened. The second transfer is larger and urgent. A shipment held by a border official. It must be cleared by morning or the insulin will spoil. Words that sound like emergency medicine attach themselves to her guilt. She moves money between accounts and tells herself it is temporary. The bank app glitches for a breath and then allows it. A late email arrives from fraud prevention that uses careful language to ask if she recognizes the recipient. She replies yes without thinking, then stares at the name that looks almost right, but not quite. She returns to the call, and Evan thanks her with a softness that feels like a hand on the back of her head. She sleeps with the laptop open, a blue rectangle on her pillow that hums until dawn. The call comes from a number she does not know. The woman on the line speaks with a measured calm and asks for Maya by full name. Agent Carla Ruiz explains that a pattern has tripped an alert, and that several recipients tied to disaster relief are part of an investigation. Maya's instinct is to protect him. She says there must be a mistake. Agent Ruiz asks if Maya can meet at a field office the next morning. She mentions that it will be easier to show than to tell. Maya agrees because the word show feels harmless, like a demonstration of forms. After the call ends, she rings Priya and hears the inhale that means please, say you are safe. Maya says she is. She says it twice. She leaves the laptop open and watches the cursor blink on an empty chat, waiting for a message that does not arrive. The conference room hums with event that clicks every 9 seconds. Agent Ruiz lays out a tablet and says she wants Maya to watch and breathe. The first clip looks familiar. A tent with canvas creases like fault lines. Ruiz taps pause on a frame where Evan leans forward, kind eyes, half smile. Then she drags a slider and the tent vanishes to reveal a studio slate, a man adjusting a mic, and a second monitor that shows Maya's face from last night's call. Ruiz explains the feed chain in plain words. A charity video harvested for the background. A face model trained for expressions. Live operators reading a script that mirrors Maya's last 10 texts. Maya tastes metal. She wants to defend him and finds there is no pronoun left that fits. Ruiz says none of this means Maya is foolish. It means the operators are practiced. She cues the next clip and asks Maya to tell her what looks wrong, not what hurts. The room holds its air like a held note. Maya nods and looks again. The real footage is ordinary in a way that feels merciless. A field medic named Thomas, 38, addresses donors in a sunny courtyard while a boom mic drifts into frame. No tent, no storm, just afternoon heat and a few bored flies. Ruiz pauses and rewinds to show the same micro smile that Evan used, the same brow lift, only here it precedes a joke about sunscreen. She brings up metadata. The file is 3 years old. The charity verified it yesterday. A watermark in the corner blooms when she increases the exposure. Maya had seen that curl of light every night and thought it was a lantern. She grips the chair to keep from floating away. Ruiz speaks softly about pattern libraries and voice timbre maps, and how grief becomes a tool when someone learns your ache. Maya flinches at the word and does not argue. She asks to see the moment when the background flickers. Ruiz nods and scrolls to a frame where a loop stutters like a skipped heartbeat. Ruiz opens a capture from a prior case. The room they see is not a tent. It is a narrow apartment with blackout curtains and foam on the walls. A man sits at a desk with a ring light and 2 monitors. Dmitry Volkov, 42nd, pale eyes, wiry shoulders, headphones clamped like armor. He rehearses the same lines Maya heard last week. On the second screen, a program maps his mouth to a borrowed face. He practices nods until they look generous. There is a whiteboard with names, each paired with a vulnerability. Under Maya's is piano, mother, rain. Ruiz does not look at her when she reads the list aloud. Maya feels heat climb her neck and then cool. She asks how many people run this with him. Ruiz says more than a few and less than an army. Enough to make it feel personal. She asks if Maya will watch another 6 minutes. Maya says yes because truth is already in the room, and turning away will not shrink it. They replay Maya's last call side by side with the raw studio feed. On the left, the Evan she loved leans in with perfect patience. On the right, Dmitry coughs, sips from a chipped mug, and mouths the same words an instant earlier. Rui turns the audio off and lets Maya watch the rhythm of it. The illusion falls apart without sound. The kind tilt of the head becomes calibration. The pause becomes lag. The smile becomes a trigger. Maya remembers every minute she filled with stories and realizes how efficiently they were mined. She wants to call Priya and cannot yet move. Ruiz says there is a way to help others and a way to protect herself. She slides a form forward and explains consent, recording, preservation, recovery steps. Maya signs and hears the pen scratch like a zipper closing. She asks if she can send one final message. Ruiz says yes, but to let her read it first. The plan is simple in its edges and sharp in its center. Maya will schedule a call and ask about the insulin shipment, then a new favor that introduces a traceable account. Ruiz will sit nearby with a legal pad, not a headset, so Maya can forget she is watched. Priya waits in the lobby, pacing grooves into the carpet, her worry kept outside like weather. Maya drafts a message that sounds like her old voice, the one that believed his tent was wind and not recycled air. She reads it aloud. Ruiz suggests one extra sentence that names a detail only the operators would know, a string for later proof. Maya sends it and feels the room tilt. She steadies herself with 3 breaths. The typing bubble appears. Her phone vibrates. Ruiz glances at the clock, then at Maya. There will be a call at 7. Maya nods and does not look away from the screen. 7 arrives with the punctuality of systems that have practiced taking. Maya props the phone against a water glass. The ringtone feels like a test of how still her hands can be. When Evan appears, his smile is exactly calibrated. The same friendly compression at the corners, the same soft inhale that reads as relief. She follows the script, asking about the insulin shipment and the border delay. Warmth pours from him in rehearsed gradients. He pivots to need with grace that once felt noble and now looks like grip. She introduces the new account that Ruiz can trace and names the private detail, the agent added. There is a flicker she never noticed before. A micro pause that belongs to someone checking a line of notes. Ruiz writes without looking up. Maya keeps her tone level and lets silence drag until Evan fills it. He does quickly with affection that uses her name like a key. She nods and says she will help again. The bubble of deception thins to something audible. They move through checkpoints. He repeats the urgency, this time with a new twist about a courier stranded after dark. Maya asks an ordinary question about the clinic generator, and he answers with the exact sentence from week 2. Ruiz slides a note toward her that reads loop. Maya nods as if reassured and asks him to confirm the shipping company. He gives a name that Ruiz underlines twice. The agent sends a text to a team Maya cannot see. The call stretches, long enough for the operator to drift from tenderness toward impatience. His tone drops a half step. When Maya mentions the new account, he hesitates before describing it as a partner nonprofit. He uses a chipped phrase about mission first that they have documented in other transcripts. Maya feels a strange, calm settle on her skin. She is no longer searching for proof. She is collecting it. She asks him to hold while she verifies a detail. He agrees with a practiced exhale that stumbles at the end. The operator pushes. He frames it as shared purpose and slips in a small rebuke about time. He introduces a discount if she wires before the hour is out. The word discount lands wrong and Ruiz's pencil stops moving. Maya asks him to show the tent exterior for a second. Says she wants to feel close to his world. He tries to pivot to the patient, and she repeats the request as if it is a tender wish. The feed stutters to a preloaded clip with a wind sound that does not match the movement of fabric. Ruiz circles the time code. Maya keeps her face open and trusting. She repeats the new account details and asks for a second contact name at the partner nonprofit. He gives one. It is a shade off a legitimate charity. Ruiz almost. The operator senses her skepticism and rushes to fill it with a confession about fear and responsibility. He says the money is not for him at all. Maya answers with quiet gratitude that makes him lean nearer to the camera. Ruiz taps her pad twice. It is time to introduce the trap. Maya says her bank flagged the earlier payment and asks if the partner can accept a temporary escrow that protects both parties. She names the traceable account with careful ease. The operator smiles for longer than a human breath, and then agrees too quickly. On a second screen, he types to someone out of frame. His eyes track text that Maya cannot see. Ruiz writes mirrored and holds up a small card that says proceed. Maya offers a verification test involving a token transfer. He accepts and sends a QR code that brings their route out of the private fog. Ruiz takes a still and texts a code phrase. Somewhere, a server records a handshake. The operator senses the power shift and hardens. He asks for trust and inserts a small threat about the insulin spoiling if bureaucracy wins. Maya nods and thanks him for understanding. She asks for 5 minutes to move funds. He tells her she is saving lives. The call ends with a tenderness that has teeth. He thanks her and signs off with a promise about when they will talk next. Ruiz exhales and begins the chain that will freeze the route. The room feels briefly hollow, like a stage after the audience has filed out. Priya steps in from the hall with eyes that shine as if she has been running in place. Maya stands. and the first tremor passes through her legs. She does not cry. The ground is too factual for tears. Ruiz explains what will follow. A preservation order, victim services, reversal attempts that work sometimes and fail other times. They will need statements and copies and patience that refuses to romanticize pain. Maya nods. She asks to text her mother and Priya at the same time. Ruiz smiles with a softness that does not patronize and says yes. Priya takes Maya's hand. They walk to the window, and the city looks exactly as it did this morning, which feels almost like mercy. Morning arrives without ceremony, a gray sheet pressed to the windows. Maya sits at her kitchen table and reads the chat thread from the beginning. Each bubble now a specimen pinned under glass. She rehearses the way a lie learns your habits. You grant it little permissions. You let it borrow your vocabulary. By the end, it has a chair at your table. She opens a blank message addressed to the name that used to warm her throat, and types 3 words before erasing them. She writes to herself instead, a list of facts that do not negotiate. Timeline. Transfer amounts. The curl of light that was a watermark, not a lantern. She prints the list and slides it into a folder Ruiz gave her. The apartment hums with appliances that do what they claim. For the first time in weeks, silence is not a test she has to pass. Her phone vibrates with a calendar alert for work she has not done. She snoozes it and makes tea. Steady hand, clean cup. The bank office smells like carpet cleaner and patient conversations. An investigator named Helen walks Maya through the ledgers and asks permission to record. Ruiz sits beside them, quiet ballast. They map the transfers from Maya's checking to the crypto ramp, then onward through exchanges with names that sound like ferries crossing fog. Each arrow steals a breath. Shame arrives without logic and tries to sit where blame belongs. Helen does not allow it. She names the vulnerabilities the operators exploited and calls them methods, not personality flaws. Ruiz asks gentle, specific questions that keep the story honest. When they reach the second transfer, Helen highlights a recipient string that now returns no owner at all. She explains chargeback windows holds the possibility of partial recovery, the certainty of paperwork. Maya signs a sworn statement and watches the ink settle, final as weather. On the way out, Ruiz squeezes her shoulder and says, "Small steps are still forward." Priya drives Maya to a Tuesday evening group on the 6th floor of a clinic that smells faintly of eucalyptus. The room is simple. A circle of chairs, a pitcher of water, a clock that ticks without apology. People introduce themselves in present tense. I am learning to sleep. I am filing reports. I am angry. When it is Maya's turn, she says her name and feels the floor hold. She says she believed the man on video calls because the ordinary details were perfect. She says she is not here for pity. She is here to relearn how to trust her own eyes. A woman across the circle nods in a way that makes the room feel less like a waiting area and more like a bridge. Afterward, the facilitator hands Maya a sheet about cognitive closure and tells her closure is a direction, not a destination. In the elevator, Priya reaches for her hand. They both look at their reflection and do not look away. That night, a new profile messages her from the same app where this began. Different photo. Same prose rhythm. A kindness that lands like a ruler, measuring her boundaries. He says his name is Noel and he works in logistics, a profession useful for moving aid across borders. Maya copies the greeting into a note and circles 3 phrases Ruiz taught her to spot. She answers with a neutral sentence that includes a harmless false detail about her neighborhood. Within minutes, Noel references it incorrectly, a mismatch that gives the game away. Ruiz texts back 3 words that feel like armor. Do not engage. Maya reports the account and blocks it, then submits the message thread to the case portal. It hits her that this is not a sequel. It is the same play with a new lead. She breathes through the anger and lets it sharpen into attention instead of poison. She pours her tea and watches it cool without forgetting it. 2 days later, Ruiz calls with the kind of news that does not fix anything but moves the line. The QR path from the sting led to an exchange willing to cooperate. A holding wallet froze with a balance that will not heal the ledger but will mark a wound on the other side. Ruiz warns that Dimitri will not stop, because pressure is a weather system he trained to live in. Still, a pressure system can be mapped. Maya listens and feels a small seam inside her close. After the call, she walks to a community center where a neglected upright waits along a hallway. She sits, cracks her knuckles the way she did at 12, and plays the first 4 bars of the piece she sold years ago with the piano. It is clumsy, honest sound. Priya records a few seconds and laughs softly when Maya misses a note. They leave the building to air so bright it feels new, even though it is just Saturday in a city that keeps its promises and breaks them in equal measure. Ruiz asks if Maya would record a victim impact statement for the sealed case file. The lens is small and patient. Maya speaks about the ordinary gestures that built the trust, the way routine made the lie feel local. She names the transfers and the nights she stayed awake, because gratitude felt like proof. She explains how the unedited footage broke the spell without breaking her mind. Not all at once, but like glass that decides to become sand again. She does not reach for poetry. She chooses dates and amounts and the exact phrases that softened her defenses. Ruiz listens without interrupting and writes a single word on her pad. Specifics. When Maya finishes, there is a quiet that feels like a hallway rather than a wall. Ruiz thanks her and explains how statements can anchor restitution petitions and training materials for agents who will meet another Maya this month. The light in the room is steady. That steadiness seems like a resource. The cooperation request reaches a unit overseas, where an analyst maps the escrow token from the sting to a cluster that has been slowly brightening on their charts. Ruiz shares the note with Maya because sometimes understanding the shape of a crime is a way to reclaim scale. The analyst's report explains money mules and short-term shells, the way a network breathes by discarding pieces that begin to smell like heat. A courier gets pinched on a small charge. He is tired of being paid in percentages. He names a renter with blackout curtains on a 4th floor walk-up and a doorbell that never works. Ruiz reminds Maya that arrests are not the same as endings. They are moments in a long line. Still, moments matter. Maya feels relief arrive like weather that opts for blue instead of gray. She texts Priya and writes it out as fact. Cooperation expanded. 1 courier in custody. Continuing. Maya visits the clinic group again, and this time she brings copies of the checklist she wrote for herself. She reads the first 3 lines aloud and watches heads tilt in recognition. Note the rhythm. Confirm the 3rd detail. Ask for a photo that changes light. A man with a shy posture describes a confession that sounded handwritten and turned out to be pulled from a library. A teacher admits she was angry at how well-crafted his silence was. Maya understands that line exactly. Between stories, the facilitator names the scam with precision that refuses to let shame name it first. Ruiz has called to say the renter skipped town before the teams arrived, which is a loss inside a partial win. Still, a laptop was left behind with scripts that mirror the ones Maya heard. She listens to the room and realizes this is not a circle of damage. It is a lab where harm is studied until it cannot hide. A message appears in her spam folder from an address that claims to be Evan's cousin. The subject line asks for forgiveness, and the body is a long spill of explanations about a debt that forced him into bad choices. It reads like a script built from apologies that passed focus group trials. Maya copies it into a document and highlights phrases that match the training Corpus Ruiz showed her. Her hand does not shake. There is a steadiness she did not expect to earn so soon. She drafts a reply she will never send that says, "I loved a careful performance and I survived it." Then she writes to herself again. Boundary set, no engagement. Evidence forwarded. She uploads the message to the portal and blocks the address. The apartment hums, The cat on her fire escape yawns. She is not waiting to be told she did the right thing. She knows it. The way you know a key belongs in the lock you own. On a Thursday evening, the community center hosts a free talk titled Seeing Through Charming Video. Ruiz stands at the side wall, off mic, while a moderator interviews Maya on stage with the lights gentle and the chairs close. Maya speaks without dramatic pauses. She explains the watermark, the loop, the way affection became a tool, the way the truth arrived not to punish her, but to introduce her to herself. She advises listeners to build friction into their yes. She gives them the checklist and the phrase she repeats now like a small prayer. Ask for the change in light. Afterward, strangers approach with stories and thanks that are brief, not confessional, and therefore easier to hold. Priya waits near the exit with a smile that reaches past worry into pride. On the walk home, the air is cool and ordinary. Maya listens to her footsteps and recognizes the sound. It is the sound of a person keeping pace with her life. The message arrives at noon with the subject line, "Last chance to explain." The sender claims to be a compliance officer, asking for a statement to help close her dispute. The body contains a link wrapped in polite language and a logo almost correct, except for a serif that leans. Maya feels the old tug toward cooperation and names it out loud. Not an instinct, a reflex. She forwards the email to Ruiz and sets her laptop aside. Ruiz answers within minutes and asks if Maya can come by the lab to watch what the link tries to do. In a glassed room with a patient hum, an analyst loads the page in a sandbox and points out the code that wants her passwords and the camera permission it would have whispered for. Maya watches the warnings scroll and feels the relief of seeing the trap in full light. Ruiz says this is escalation dressed as closure. It means the network noticed resistance. Maya nods. She adds a line to her checklist. Never rush to help a form fill itself. She leaves the building into clean afternoon air. A month later, Maya sits in a courtroom that holds its echoes like breath. Restitution is a word that sounds heavier than it travels. The judge speaks in measured clauses, and the attorneys answer with numbers that feel both precise and soft at the edges. Maya reads her impact statement again, this time to wood, paneled walls, and a clerk who never looks bored. She keeps to facts, to the hours spent untangling roots and the way her concentration was colonized for weeks. On a remote screen, a public defender argues for a courier who carried tokens without asking where they would land. Maya listens and finds she can hold two truths at once. Harm has authors and harm has hands that do not read the script. The order that follows will not repair her ledger, but it writes a line into the record. The judge thanks her for clarity. She thanks no one. She simply stands, gathers her folder, and steps back into a hallway where the light is even and her breath is steady. Priya suggests a detour after lunch. A small shop where secondhand instruments lean against each other like tired friends. The owner remembers the brand of the piano Maya sold and offers a used keyboard with weighted keys. Maya rests her fingers and plays a scale that wobbles, then steadies. The sound is unadorned, not audition material, only evidence that hands can relearn what they release. Priya asks if she is afraid the past will rush back every time she sits. Maya says fear is real, and so is practice. She buys the keyboard with a receipt that looks ordinary in the best way. They carry it up the stairs, laughing at the awkward wait, and Maya sets it by the window where rain once scored her nights. She writes a label for the case that reads "Return to Owner." When she plays the first movement, she stops thinking about surveillance and scripts. The room fills with notes that begin and end exactly where she tells them to. Ruiz calls on a quiet Sunday. An overseas partner executed a warrant on a fourth-floor flat and found what they expected and what they did not. Foam on the walls, a ring light, 2 monitors, a whiteboard with first names paired to small biographical hooks. On a shelf, a folder of scripts translated into 3 languages. The renter was gone. The neighbor said he left at dawn with a single backpack and eyes that did not blink. Ruiz sends stills to Maya only after asking if she wants to see them. Maya chooses yes, and scrolls through the photos slowly. In one frame, a half-erased line reads "Piano Mother Rain." She had known those words were used against her. Seeing them in marker turns knowledge into matter. Ruiz says investigations are long walks, and some stretches are uphill. Maya thanks her for the miles Ruiz carries that no one sees. She saves the images to the case folder, not to the album where birthdays live. Then she closes the lid and goes outside. That night, Maya prints a card small enough to fit a wallet. Front side holds her checklist in 5 lines that can be read at a crosswalk. Note the rhythm. Confirm the 3rd detail. Ask for light that changes. Verify outside the chat. Slow down. On the back, she writes a sentence meant for the version of herself who almost forgot she was not the sum of a well-curated mirror. Your attention is a resource and you decide where it goes. She tapes a second copy inside her cabinet, beside spices and tea. She deletes the thread from the app and keeps the evidence where it belongs, in folders that do not open by accident. The city outside is typical Tuesday noise, sirens that are not hers, laughter that does not ask for anything. She plays a simple melody until the notes feel less like repair and more like habit. The kettle clicks, she pours. She is not waiting for the next twist. She is composing her next ordinary. Maya returns to work on a quiet Monday, the kind where elevators sigh and keycards decide who belongs. She expects stairs and finds none. Her desk plant has survived on office light, proof that endurance can be boring and still beautiful. At lunch, she drafts a note to the design team about trust patterns in interfaces, the little seams where urgency sneaks in wearing friendly colors. She builds a prototype with friction by intent, extra confirmations, pauses that invite thinking, a panel that asks for a change in light before any payment leaves. She writes copy that does not scold. It simply asks for proof, the way a good friend does, patient and plain. Her manager stops by and thanks her without asking for the story behind the story. The thanks lands like a hand on a railing. She keeps working. When a calendar alert suggests a break, she actually stands. The city looks ordinary out the window. She takes a picture of it and labels the file evidence of a good day. Ruiz invites Maya to sit in on a training for new agents. The room smells like dry markers and coffee that has decided to be brave rather than fresh. A slide shows the tent image beside the courtyard, then the studio with foam and the whiteboard that named her Rain and Piano. Ruiz asks Maya to speak about the feeling of almost how near truth is more dangerous than fiction that forgets to blink. She tells them certainty is not the goal. Attention is. She describes the moment the watermark resolved from charm into data, and the silence that followed, which did not break her, only edited the scene. An agent in the back asks what helped most in the first 24 hours. She answers without dressing it up. A folder. A list. Someone steady in the chair beside me. Ruiz does not smile for effect. She writes those words on the board and underlines them twice. The room is quiet in a way that means people are learning. On a video call with her mother, the conversation avoids the wreckage and still honors it. They talk about dumplings and the neighbor who plays the same radio station at dawn. Then her mother asks if the piano piece found new keys. Maya turns the camera and plays a few measures on the keyboard by the window. The notes are not a performance. They are proof of attendance. Her mother closes her eyes and hums the second line an octave lower. They laugh at the lag that makes their duet a polite echo. Maya tells her about the checklist card in the wallet and the talk at the community center. Her mother nods and says that repetition is how muscles learn courage. They sit in companionable quiet while the kettle works. When the call ends, Maya does something she has avoided since the sting. She scrolls to the old thread and presses delete. The folder remains. The theater is gone. The room sounds like water finding its boil. Priya proposes a small ritual that is not about erasing but about marking what will not be repeated. They walk to the river with a notebook that holds the words, Maya never sent. The pages are not burnt. They are scanned and filed where evidence belongs. Here, by the water, they read a few lines aloud, not to grant them power, but to empty them of it. Maya hears phrases that once felt like shelter and now sound like advertisements made of her biography. She closes the cover and writes a final entry addressed to her future self. Do not be afraid of quiet. It is not the absence of care. It is the room where your questions fit. Priya squeezes her hand once, then lets go, proof that care can release without retreating. The light over the river goes soft. People pass with dogs that do not know they are in a ceremony. That helps. The ordinary keeps showing up on time. Weeks later, an email arrives from the exchange that froze part of the route. The subject line is unglamorous and perfect. Partial restitution notice. The amount will not reverse the story, but it tells a new one about labor that adds up. Maya forwards it to Ruiz with a thank you that needs no adjectives, and to Priya with a single emoji that means, yes, still here. She opens her calendar and writes a small appointment for the next month. Review checklist. It is not for fear. It is for maintenance, like changing filters or sharpening knives. That night, she records a voice memo for herself about the difference between romance and recognition, about how love will never demand a transfer to prove it is real. She plays the message back and hears not a victim statement but a field guide. The window is open. The city breathes. She returns to the keyboard and practices until the melody finds its own spine.